The final mortgage payment felt surreal in my hands. After 8 grueling years of double shifts, overtime weekends, and surviving on instant noodles, I was finally holding the paperwork that made our family home truly mine. Sarah Chen, mortgage-free homeowner. The words had a beautiful ring to them. I traced my finger along the modest 3-bedroom house's deed, remembering the day Mom and Dad died in that car accident. I was 26 then, fresh out of nursing school, drowning in student loans, and suddenly responsible for a mortgage that felt impossible. Marcus was only 21, still in college, and completely overwhelmed by grief. Someone had to step up. Someone had to save the house our parents had loved so much. While my college friends were traveling, dating, and building their careers, I was pulling 16-hour shifts at St. Mary's Hospital. Every extra dollar went toward the mortgage. I watched my savings account hover near zero for years, declining invitations to weddings I couldn't afford to attend, wearing scrubs that were practically threadbare because buying new clothes felt frivolous when the house payment loomed every month. The sacrifice was worth it, though. This house held our childhood memories. The kitchen where Mom taught us to make dumplings, the living room where Dad fell asleep watching football every Sunday, the backyard where Marcus and I built snow forts every winter. Losing it would have meant losing them all over again. Marcus had offered to help financially once he graduated and found his job at the engineering firm, but by then I was already 3 years into my payment plan. Besides, he was planning to marry Jessica, and I knew they'd need their money for their future. I was proud to carry this burden alone, proud to preserve our family legacy. The house wasn't much to look at from the outside, a simple ranch-style home built in the 70s with beige siding and a small front porch. But it was ours. The mortgage company could never take it away now. No bank could threaten foreclosure. No landlord could raise the rent or kick us out. This was home, purchased with my blood, sweat, and 8 years of relentless determination. I called Marcus immediately after signing the final paperwork. "It's official," I told him, unable to keep the joy from my voice. "The house is completely paid off." "Sarah, that's incredible," he said, and I could hear genuine happiness in his voice. "You did something amazing. Mom and Dad would be so proud." "We should celebrate," I suggested. "Bring Jessica and the twins over for dinner this weekend. I'll actually cook something that doesn't come from a microwave box." Marcus laughed. "Jessica will love that. She's been saying we need to spend more family time together." That should have been my first warning sign, but I was too euphoric to notice the subtle emphasis in his words. I hung up the phone and looked around my living room, with pure satisfaction. The worn furniture that I'd been too broke to replace suddenly looked perfect. The outdated wallpaper that I'd promised myself I'd change someday seemed charming. Everything was exactly as it should be. I poured myself a glass of wine that night, something I rarely indulged in during my mortgage-paying years, and sat on my front porch watching the sunset. Mrs. Patterson from next door waved and called out congratulations. Somehow news traveled fast in our small neighborhood. I waved back, feeling lighter than I had in nearly a decade. For the first time since my parents' death, I could breathe freely. I could start saving for the future instead of just surviving paycheck to paycheck. Maybe I'd finally take that vacation I'd been dreaming about. Maybe I'd renovate the kitchen. Maybe I'd even consider dating again, now that I wasn't consumed with financial stress. The possibilities stretched endlessly ahead of me, as golden as the evening light filtering through the maple trees my father had planted 20 years ago. 3 days later, Marcus arrived with Jessica and the twins. But something felt different the moment they walked through my front door. Instead of the celebratory dinner I'd planned, Jessica marched straight to my home office without even greeting me properly. "This room would be perfect for the twins' nursery," she announced, measuring the space with her eyes. "We'll need to move your desk out, obviously." I laughed, thinking she was joking. "Very funny, Jess. Come on, dinner's ready." But she wasn't laughing. She turned to face me with a serious expression that made my stomach drop. "Sarah, we need to talk. Marcus and I have been discussing this for months. Now that the house is paid off, it's time for the family to come together." "What do you mean?" I asked, though something cold was already creeping up my spine. Marcus cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Sarah, Jessica has a point. This house belongs to the whole family now. Mom and Dad would have wanted us all to share it." "Share it," I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. Jessica stepped forward, her tone becoming more assertive. "Family property belongs to the whole family, Sarah. You've been selfish keeping this big house all to yourself while we're cramped in that tiny apartment paying ridiculous rent. The twins need space to grow." "Selfish?" The word hit me like a physical blow. I worked double shifts for 8 years to save this house. I sacrificed everything. "And we're grateful," Jessica interrupted smoothly, "but that doesn't give you the right to hoard family assets. I've already talked to Aunt Linda and Uncle Robert. They agree that you've been unreasonable." My blood went cold. "You've been discussing my house with other family members?" "It's not just your house," Marcus said quietly, avoiding my eyes. "It was Mom and Dad's house. They raised both of us here. And I'm the one who kept it from being foreclosed," I snapped. "Where were you when I was eating ramen noodles for dinner so I could make mortgage payments?" Jessica's voice turned icy. "That was your choice, Sarah. No one asked you to be a martyr, but now it's time to do the right thing and share with family." I watched in horror as Jessica began directing Marcus to bring suitcases in from their car. "What are you doing?" "We're moving in," she said matter-of-factly. "The twins' cribs are already in the truck. Marcus, start with the nursery furniture." "You can't just move in," I protested. "This is my home." "It's the family home," Jessica corrected, "and family takes care of family." Over the next hour, I watched helplessly as they transformed my quiet sanctuary into chaos. The twins' toys scattered across my living room floor. Jessica rearranged my kitchen cabinets to accommodate baby bottles and formula. Marcus hung their clothes in my parents' old bedroom closet. "We'll split the utilities 3 ways," Jessica announced, as if she were doing me a favor. "And obviously, we'll need you to babysit sometimes when Marcus and I go out." "You can't do this," I said, my voice shaking. "I won't let you do this." Jessica smiled coldly. "Sarah, you're being dramatic. This is what families do. They share. They support each other. I've already explained to everyone how you were planning to keep this whole house to yourself, like some kind of hermit. They're concerned about you." "Concerned about me?" "Living alone all these years, no boyfriend, no social life. It's not healthy, Sarah. Having us here will be good for you too." That night, after they'd settled in and put the twins to bed in what used to be my office, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. I could hear Jessica and Marcus talking in low voices in the next room, making plans for renovations, discussing which walls they wanted to knock down to open up the space. The next morning, I discovered the final insult. Jessica had changed the front door locks. "For security," she explained when I confronted her. "I made copies for Uncle Robert and Aunt Linda, too, in case of emergencies. They'll be stopping by later to see how we're settling in." As I stood there holding my now useless key to my own home, watching my brother avoid eye contact while his wife reorganized my kitchen like she owned it, I realized this wasn't a misunderstanding or temporary arrangement. This was a carefully orchestrated takeover, and I had been completely blindsided. The full scope of Jessica's manipulation became clear over the following week. What I'd initially thought was spontaneous greed was actually a meticulously planned campaign that had been months in the making. It started with a phone call from my childhood friend, Amy, who worked at the local bank. "Sarah, I probably shouldn't tell you this, but Jessica came in 6 months ago asking about property transfer procedures. She wanted to know how to add names to a deed. 6 months ago, 2 months before I'd even made my final payment. She also asked about homestead exemptions and what happens when multiple family members claim ownership," Amy continued. "I thought it was odd at the time, but I figured maybe you were planning something together." The pieces began falling into place with sickening clarity. I remembered Jessica's sudden interest in family gatherings over the past year, her pointed comments about how big and empty my house seemed, her frequent mentions of their cramped apartment situation. She hadn't been making conversation, she'd been building a case. I called my cousin David, who lived 3 states away. "Has Jessica been talking to you about me?" "Well," David said hesitantly, "she mentioned she was worried about you living alone in such a big house. Said it wasn't healthy for someone your age to be so isolated from family." My hands clenched into fists. "What else did she say?" "She painted it like you were being selfish, Sarah. Said you were hoarding family assets while Marcus struggled to support his young family. Made it sound like you were refusing to help them." One by one, I called other relatives. The pattern was always the same. Jessica had been systematically poisoning them against me for months, portraying herself as the concerned sister-in-law worried about my mental health, and Marcus as the struggling father desperate for family support. She'd painted me as the villain in my own story. The breaking point came when I overheard Jessica on the phone with someone, likely another family member. "Sarah's finally starting to see reason," she was saying. "I think deep down she knows she was being unrealistic, keeping the whole house to herself. Marcus deserves his share of his parents' legacy." That night, I drove to a 24-hour diner across town and sat in a corner booth with my laptop, researching property law until dawn. What I discovered was both liberating and infuriating. As the sole name on the deed and mortgage, I had absolute legal right to the property. Jessica's claims about family property were complete fiction. She had no legal standing whatsoever. But I also realized that a straightforward eviction notice, while legally sound, would only make me look like the villain Jessica had already painted me to be. The extended family would see it as proof of my selfishness. I'd win the legal battle, but lose the family entirely. That's when the plan began forming in my mind. Instead of fighting Jessica's narrative head-on, I would let her dig her own grave. I would document everything, every demand, every manipulation, every lie she told. I would let her reveal her true character to the family herself. The next morning, I stopped by an electronics store and purchased a small digital recorder. I also opened a new bank account and quietly arranged for a storage unit across town. If Jessica wanted to play games, I would play them better. When I returned home, I found Jessica in the kitchen, reorganizing my spice rack. "Oh, good, you're back," she said, without looking up. "Marcus and I were discussing the mortgage situation. Since we're all living here now, we think it's only fair that you pay us back for half of what you put into the house over the years. After all, Marcus deserves his inheritance." I smiled sweetly and pulled out my phone, pretending to check messages while actually starting the recording app. "That's an interesting idea, Jessica. Can you explain exactly what you mean by that?" For the next 20 minutes, I listened to her elaborate on her twisted logic while my phone captured every word. She explained how she'd calculated that I owed them money, how they deserved compensation for their sacrifice of living in a small apartment, how family obligations worked. When she finished, I nodded thoughtfully. "You know what? You're absolutely right. Families should support each other." Jessica's eyes lit up with victory. "I'm so glad you're finally being reasonable about this." What she didn't know was that I had just handed her the rope she would use to hang herself. Over the next 2 weeks, I became a master of covert surveillance in my own home. The small digital recorder became my constant companion, hidden in my pocket during every conversation with Jessica. I documented her increasingly outrageous demands with methodical precision. "Sarah, we need to talk about the master bedroom," Jessica announced one morning as I prepared for work. I immediately pressed record. "What about it?" I asked innocently. "Marcus and I should have it. We're a family with children. You're just one person. You can take the smaller room down the hall." She paused, then added with calculated sweetness, "I mean, it's what your parents would have wanted, don't you think? For their grandchildren to have the best room?" I captured everything. Her demands that I pay for childcare so she could focus on making the house more family-friendly. Her insistence that my work schedule should revolve around the twins' nap times. And her casual mentions of "when we renovate," as if my opinion was irrelevant. The most damning recording came when I pretended to be asleep and overheard Jessica on the phone with Marcus after he returned from work. "She's finally starting to crack." Jessica's voice carried clearly through the thin walls. "By the time we're done, she'll be so grateful to stay in the guest room, she won't fight us on anything else. Your sister is weaker than I thought." "Are you sure about this plan?" Marcus's voice was barely audible. "Trust me. In 6 months, this will legally be our house, and she'll either accept being our live-in babysitter or she'll leave voluntarily. Either way, we win." I also began documenting Jessica's social media activity. Her Facebook posts painted a picture of domestic bliss in our beautiful family home, with carefully cropped photos that made it appear she was the homeowner. She shared articles about multi-generational living and tagged relatives with comments like, "So grateful. Marcus's family is finally all together under one roof." The next phase required Oscar-worthy acting skills. I began playing the role of the defeated sister, gradually conceding to Jessica's demands while secretly preparing my counterattack. "You know what, Jessica? You're right about the renovations," I said one evening, ensuring my phone was recording. "If we're going to be living together long-term, we should make this place work for everyone." Jessica's eyes gleamed with triumph. "I'm so glad you're finally seeing the bigger picture. I've already gotten quotes from 3 contractors." "Quotes?" I kept my voice carefully neutral. "For knocking down the wall between the kitchen and living room, updating the master bathroom, and converting the basement into a proper playroom for the twins." She pulled out a folder thick with paperwork. "It'll cost about $40,000, but it's an investment in our family's future." "Our family's future," I repeated, making sure the recording caught her exact words. Over the following weeks, I encouraged Jessica's renovation fantasies while secretly moving my valuable possessions to the storage unit. My grandmother's jewelry, my parents' photo albums, important documents, and anything with sentimental value disappeared bit by bit into cardboard boxes that Jessica assumed contained old clothes for donation. I also began gathering evidence of property damage. Jessica had painted over the original hardwood floors in the twins' room without asking. She'd installed new light fixtures, thrown away furniture she deemed outdated, and hired a landscaping company to redesign the backyard. All decisions made without consulting me about my own property. The culmination of my strategy required patience and perfect timing. I suggested that Jessica host a large family gathering for Marcus's upcoming birthday. "What a wonderful idea," she exclaimed. "We can show everyone how beautiful the house looks now that it's being properly taken care of." "Exactly," I agreed. "Why don't you invite everyone? Aunt Linda, Uncle Robert, all the cousins. Make it a real celebration of family unity." Jessica threw herself into party planning with frightening enthusiasm. She spent hundreds of dollars on catering, decorations, and a new sound system for the living room. She created a Facebook event titled "Marcus's Birthday Celebration at Our Family Home," and invited 30 relatives. The week before the party, I made my final preparations. I contacted my lawyer, David Chen, no relation, despite the surname, and arranged for him to attend the party as my date. I also reached out to my friend Amy from the bank, asking her to attend as a witness to Jessica's earlier inquiries about property transfers. Most importantly, I prepared copies of all my documentation: the deed with my name as sole owner, the mortgage payment records showing 8 years of payments from my personal account, the recordings of Jessica's manipulation, screenshots of her social media posts, and receipts for all the unauthorized renovations she'd funded. The night before the party, Jessica cornered me in the hallway with a satisfied smile. "Sarah, I want you to know how proud I am of how you've grown over these past few weeks. Learning to share and put family first, it's exactly what Marcus and I hoped would happen." I smiled back, my phone recording every word. "Oh, Jessica, I've learned so much from watching you. Tomorrow is going to be perfect." As she walked away to check on the twins, I felt a mixture of sadness and anticipation. Tomorrow, the family would finally see Jessica's true character. Tomorrow, justice would be served with a side of birthday cake. The trap was set, and Jessica had built it entirely herself. In the days leading up to the party, Jessica's behavior reached new heights of audacity. She began treating me like hired help in my own home, assigning me cleaning tasks and dictating my schedule around the twins' needs. "Sarah, I need you to deep clean the guest bathroom before Saturday," she announced while painting her nails at my kitchen table. "That's going to be your bathroom now, so you should take pride in keeping it spotless." When I asked about using my own living room to watch television, she waved dismissively. "The twins are playing in there. You can watch TV in your room." My room. As if I were a boarder paying rent instead of the homeowner. The breaking point came when Jessica decided my parents' belongings were cluttering up the space. I returned from work Thursday evening to find her sorting through boxes in the garage. "I'm donating most of this stuff," she said casually, holding up my mother's jewelry box. "It's just collecting dust, and we need room for the twins' outdoor toys." "That's my mother's jewelry box," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "Was your mother's," Jessica corrected. "She's gone, Sarah. You can't hold on to every little trinket forever. It's not healthy." I watched her toss my father's military medals into a donation pile and felt something cold settle in my chest. She had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Throughout the week, relatives called to discuss the upcoming party. Jessica had been busy painting herself as the family peacemaker who'd finally brought everyone together. "I'm so glad you girls worked things out," Aunt Linda said during one call. "Jessica explained how stubborn you were being at first, but family is family." Uncle Robert was more direct. "Your parents would be proud to see their grandchildren growing up in that house, Sarah. It's what they would have wanted." But not everyone was convinced. My cousin David called privately. "Something doesn't feel right about this whole situation. Jessica's version of events keeps changing." Even Marcus began showing cracks in his solidarity with his wife. I caught him staring at family photos in the hallway with an expression of guilt and confusion. "Do you remember when Dad taught us to ride bikes in the driveway?" he asked quietly one evening. "Of course," I replied. "Jessica says we should pave over the driveway, make it more modern." He paused. "But those tire marks from when I crashed into the garage door are still there." As the party approached, Jessica's demands became increasingly unreasonable. She wanted me to wear a specific outfit that would make me look more grateful and family-oriented. She assigned me to serve drinks and clean up afterward, while she played hostess in my own home. "I want everyone to see how well our new arrangement is working," she explained. "You're going to show them how much happier you are now that you're not isolated and selfish." The final insult came Friday night. Jessica presented me with an envelope containing what she called a rental agreement. "Since you're essentially living in our guest room now, we think it's fair that you contribute rent," she said. "It's very reasonable, only $800 a month, plus utilities." I stared at the document in disbelief. She wanted me to pay rent to live in my own house. "Think of it as your contribution to the family expenses," she continued. "Marcus and I are carrying the emotional and financial burden of homeownership now. The least you can do is help with costs." As I looked at her satisfied smile, surrounded by the decorations she'd bought for a party in my house, demanding rent for my own guest room, while planning to throw away my parents' memories, I felt the last of my patience evaporate. Tomorrow's revelation couldn't come soon enough. Saturday evening arrived with perfect weather for Jessica's elaborate outdoor celebration. She had transformed my backyard into an elegant party space, complete with string lights, rented tables, and a catered buffet that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payments used to be. 28 family members gathered on my patio, admiring Jessica's beautiful home, as she graciously accepted compliments on her hosting skills and decorating taste. She wore a flowing summer dress and played the perfect hostess, ensuring everyone's drinks were full while I was relegated to clearing empty plates. "Sarah looks so much healthier now that she's not isolated," I heard Jessica tell Aunt Linda. "Living with family has been wonderful for her mental state." David Chen, my lawyer, arrived fashionably late as my date, blending seamlessly into the crowd with his casual attire and warm smile. Amy from the bank came as my +1, bringing a bottle of wine and positioning herself near the main gathering area. As Marcus's birthday dinner concluded and Jessica prepared to make a toast, I excused myself briefly and returned with a small stack of papers and my laptop. "Before we cut the cake," I announced, raising my voice to capture everyone's attention, "I have something important to share with the family." Jessica beamed, clearly expecting some heartfelt speech about gratitude and family unity. "Oh, how sweet. Sarah wants to say something." I smiled back at her. "I do. I want to tell everyone the truth about our living situation." The backyard fell quiet, except for the gentle hum of conversation from neighboring houses. Jessica's smile faltered slightly, but she maintained her composure. "As you all know, I spent 8 years paying off this house after our parents died," I began, holding up the property deed. "What you might not know is that 3 weeks ago, Jessica and Marcus moved in without asking and declared this house family property." "Sarah," Jessica interrupted with a nervous laugh, "we discussed this. You agreed that family should live together." "Did I?" I pulled out my phone and pressed play on the first recording. Jessica's voice filled the backyard. "Family property belongs to the whole family, Sarah. You've been selfish, keeping this big house all to yourself while we're cramped in that tiny apartment paying ridiculous rent." The color drained from Jessica's face as her own words played back to her. Several relatives exchanged uncomfortable glances. "That's taken out of context," she stammered. I played the second recording, where Jessica explained her plan to Marcus. "By the time we're done, she'll be so grateful to stay in the guest room, she won't fight us on anything else. Your sister is weaker than I thought." Marcus's face went white. "Jessica, what is she talking about?" "Wait, there's more," I said, opening my laptop to display screenshots of Jessica's Facebook posts. For the past 6 months, Jessica has been telling family members that I was being selfish and hoarding family assets. She's been planning this takeover since before I even made my final mortgage payment. I pulled out Amy's written statement about Jessica's bank inquiries. Jessica visited the bank 6 months ago asking about property transfer procedures. This wasn't a spontaneous family decision. It was a calculated scheme. Uncle Robert looked stunned. "Jessica, is this true?" Before Jessica could answer, I presented the rental agreement she'd given me the night before. Yesterday, Jessica demanded I pay $800 monthly rent to live in my own house. She also threw away our parents' belongings without permission and spent thousands of dollars on renovations to property that isn't hers. The backyard erupted in shocked murmurs. Aunt Linda stared at Jessica with disgust. "You made us believe Sarah was being unreasonable." "You manipulated all of us," David added angrily. Jessica's composure finally cracked. "This house is too big for one person. Marcus deserves his inheritance. I was trying to help this family." "Help yourself, you mean," Marcus said quietly, his voice filled with betrayal. "How could you lie to me? How could you make me lie to my sister?" I handed David Chen a folder of legal documents. "As my attorney, would you please explain Jessica's legal standing regarding this property?" David cleared his throat. "Based on the deed and mortgage records, Sarah Chen is the sole legal owner of this property. Jessica and Marcus have no claim whatsoever. They are essentially squatters who have committed property damage and theft. Furthermore," I continued, "I'm presenting Jessica with this bill for damages, unauthorized renovations, and unpaid utilities totaling $12,000. You have 30 days to vacate my property and pay this amount, or I'll pursue legal action." Jessica stared at the papers in her shaking hands, finally understanding that her perfect plan had become her complete undoing. The family she'd tried to manipulate now saw her true character, and the house she'd tried to steal was legally beyond her reach. The birthday party was officially over,